Hey Rayleigh, and anybody else watching, and welcome back to another message from your father. So we've been looking at the defeated kings and then also the list of armies and lands yet to be taken. So we've been looking in Joshua. Today is going to be 14 through 16. So today we're going to be looking at some of the land division. If you remember last time, that was that big summation of, hey, here are the 31 kings that have been conquered so far. So what happens with all that land? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at today. The land division, we're going to look at Hebron, given to Caleb specifically. Also, Judah, Ephraim, and Manasseh's land allotments. So we'll see all of that in these three chapters. So 14, 15, and 16 is where we're going to be looking. So chapter 14. Now, these are the areas the Israelites received as an inheritance in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel allotted to them. Their inheritances were assigned by lot to the 9.5 tribes, as the Lord had commanded through Moses. Moses had granted the 2.5 tribes their inheritance east of the Jordan, but had not granted the Levites an inheritance among the rest, for the sons of Joseph had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no share of the land, but only towns to live in, with pasture lands for their flocks and herds. So the Israelites divided the land, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now the men of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my brothers who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt with fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses, while Israel moved about in the desert. So here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I was just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out, just as he said." Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man among the Anakites. Then the land had rest from war. Chapter 15. The allotment for the tribe of Judah, clan by clan, extended down to the territory of Edom, to the desert of Zin in the extreme south. Their southern boundary started from the bay at the northern end of the Salt Sea, crossed the south of Scorpion Pass, continued on to Zin, and went over to the south of Kadesh Barnea. Then it ran past Hezron up to Adar and curved around to Karka. It then passed along Asmon and joined the Wadi of Egypt, ending at the sea. This is their southern boundary. The eastern boundary is the Salt Sea as far as the mouth of the Jordan. The north boundary started from the bay at the sea of the mouth of the Jordan, went up to Beth Hogla, and continued north of Beth Araba to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben. The boundary then went up to Debir from the valley of Achor and turned north towards Gilgal, which faces the pass of Adumim, south of the gorge. It continued along the waters of En-Shemesh and came out at En-Rogel. Then it ran up the valley of Ben-Hinnom along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem. From there it climbed to the top of the hill west of the Hinnom Valley at the northern end of the valley of Rephidim. From the hilltop of the boundary, headed towards the spring of the waters of Nephtoah, came out at the towns of Mount Ephron, and went down towards Bela, that is Kirjath Jearim. Then it curved westward from Bela to Mount Seir, ran along the northern slope of Mount Jearim, that is Kesalon, continued down towards Beth Shemesh and crossed to Timnah. It went to the northern slope of Ekron, turned towards Sherachon, passed along to Mount Bela, and reached Jabneel. The boundary ended at the sea. The western boundary is the coastline of the Great Sea. These are the boundaries around the people of Judah by their clans. In accordance with the Lord's command to him, Joshua gave Caleb, son of Jephunneh, a portion of Judah, Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron. Arba was the forefather of Anak. From Hebron, Caleb drove out 3 Anakites, Shishai, Ahiman, and Talmai, descendants of Anak. From there he marched against the people living in Debir, formerly called Kirjath Sepher. And Caleb said, I will give my daughter Aksa in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kirjath Sepher. Othniel, the son of Kenath, Caleb's brother, took it. So Caleb gave his daughter Aksa to him in marriage. One day, when she came to Othniel, she urged him to go to her father for a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, What can I do for you? She replied, Do me a special favor. Since you have given me land in the Negev, give me also springs of water. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. This is the inheritance of the tribe of Judah, clan by clan. In the southernmost towns of the tribe of Judah in the Negev, towards the boundary of Edom, were Kabzeel, Eder, Jagur, Kinna, Dimona, Adada, Keshish, Hazor, Ithnan, Ziph, Telem, Baloth, Hazor Hadathath, Kirath Hezron, that is Hazor, Amem, Shema, Molda, Hazar Gada, Heshman, Beth Pelet, Hazar Shoal, Beersheba, Bizothiah, Bala, Im, Ezem, Elotalad, Kessel, Horma, Ziklag, Madmana, Shoshana, Lebaoth, Shalim, Ain, and Rimmon, a total of 29 towns and their villages. In the western foothills, Eshtaol, Zola, Ashna, Zoa, En-Ginim, Tufa, Anam, Jarmuth, Adullam, Soka, Azekah, Sherem, Adatham, and Gerada, or Gerodathanim, 14 towns and their villages. Zenon, Hadasha, Migdal-Gad, Dalian, Mizpah, Joktheel, Lachish, Bozkath, Eglon, Kaban, Lashmas, Kitlish, Gederoth, Beth Dagon, Nema, and Makada, 16 towns and their villages. Libnah, Ether, Ashan, Iftha, Ashna, Nezib, Kaliah, Akzib, and Marishah, 9 towns and their villages. Ekron was, with its surrounding settlements and villages, west of Ekron. All there were in the vicinity of Ashdod, together with their villages. Ashdod, its surrounding settlements and villages, and Gaza, its settlements and villages, as far as the Wadi of Egypt and the coastline of the Great Sea. In the hill country, Shamir, Jatir, Sekoa, Dana, Kirath Sanah, that is Debir, Anab, Eshtemo, Anim, Goshen, Halan, Gilo, 11 towns and their villages. Arab, Duma, Eshan, Janim, Beth Tufa, Akaf, Hutma, Kirath Arba, that is Hebron, and Zor, 9 towns and their villages. Maon, Carmel, Ziph, Juphah, Jezreel, Jokdim, Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah, 10 towns and their villages. Halhul, Beth Zur, Gedor, Merath, Beth Enoth, and Elikon, 6 towns and their villages. Kirath Baal, that is Kirjath Jearim, and Rabbah, 2 towns and their villages. In the desert, Beth Araba, Midden, Seka, Nibshan, the city of salt, and En-Gedi, 6 towns and their villages. Judah could not dislodge the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. To this day, the Jebusites live there with the people of Judah. Chapter 16. The allotment for Joseph began at the Jordan of Jericho, east of the waters of Jericho, and went up from there through the desert into the hill country of Bethel. It went on from Bethel, that is Luz, crossed over to the territory of the Archites in Ataroth, descended westward to the territory of the Japhthalites, as far as the region of lower Beth Horon, and on to Gezer, ending at the sea. So Manasseh and Ephraim, the descendants of Joseph, received their inheritance. This was the boundary of Ephraim clan by clan. The boundary of their inheritance went up from Ataroth Adar in the east to upper Beth Horon and continued to the sea. From Mikmathith on the north it curved eastward to Tanath Shiloh. passing by it to Genoa on the east. Then it went down from Genoa to Ataroth and Nara, touched Jericho, and came down at the Jordan. From Tapua, the border went west to Kanah ravine and ended at the sea. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the Ephraimites, clan by clan. It also included all the towns and their villages that were set aside for the Ephraimites within the inheritance of the Manassites. They did not dislodge the Canaanites living in Gezer. To this day, the Canaanites live among the people of Ephraim, but are required to do forced labor. So we can see there, again, a ton of those allotments. And I think what we can take away from that, and from the 31 kings that were defeated, that yes, God has guaranteed them this land if they are obedient to go up and claim it. Now, that doesn't mean that that's easy, right? They still had battles, they still had scary things to do, and yet they knew that God would be with them. So my prayer for you, Rayleigh, again, and I say this a lot, my prayer for you is that you know that God doesn't guarantee us an easy life. What he does say is it's best to store up treasures in heaven where moth and dust don't destroy. And that's really important because we recognize that what we're doing here is not for rewards here. It is that we may be with God in heaven. Now, we can't earn our salvation, absolutely not. But we can treasure up, or we can store up treasures in heaven when we're with God, which is gift enough. Gift alone is to be with God. And I'm convinced that we have absolutely no idea how absolutely incredible that will be. But on top of that, we can store up treasures in heaven, is what the Bible says. But does that mean we'll experience nothing down here? Well, absolutely not. To me, you are testimony of that. Your very life is testimony that God is still gracious and still gives us things due to his own grace, not necessarily due to as a reward for my behavior, but as the Psalms tell us, and even in Proverbs too, life goes better when you're obedient to God, when you fear the Lord and keep his commands. So I know that's a long-winded prayer for you, but my prayer for you is that you recognize that life will go better and eternity infinitely better when you fear the Lord and keep his commands, and that you're putting all your faith in Christ. Anyway, know that I love you so, so much. And anyone else as well, know that I appreciate you so much as well. And I will plan on seeing you tomorrow. Have a good one.